All right, now that we've got our basic styling set up, let's start taking a look at how we can create the animation. So for my animation, I want to create this drawing in and drawing out loop idea. So that's achieved by doing some manipulations on the stroke of each of our shapes. So if we come to our file here, we're going to look at how we can manipulate that stroke and make some changes. So what we're going to do to create that is we're going to use a styling called stroke dash array in combination with our stroke dash offset. So I'm going to start with the base. So I'm going to target our base here, hash base, and then I'm going to create a stroke dash array. And I'm just going to start with some small numbers here just to demonstrate what it does. So what this is going to do is it's going to add a dash to my stroke. So we see we got these dashes and some gaps. So the number, the first number here is the length of the dash, and then the second number here is the length of the gap. So if I increase that, you see our gap gets bigger. That stays the same. So we could play around with those numbers a bit to get a nice dash. And then we can play with another attribute here and put that as stroke dash offset. I should learn to spell. Set. And then so what this will do is this will essentially shift our dashes around our circle. So if we come in and we inspect that, we can change this number here. And you see as I change the number, it will shift everything around the circle. So basically what we can do to create that drawn on effect is we can use a bit of an extreme example of stroke dash array in combination with this stroke dash offset to create this drawing on effect. So how we need to do that is we need to figure out the exact length of this path and then essentially create a stroke dash that is that exact length. So we can do that by going to Adobe Illustrator here. I'm going to select my base here, and then I'm going to go to the window panel and open the document info. And then I'm going to go into my file here and make sure I'm in objects. And so if we look here, some of the info we get here is paths, and then we get a length of our path here. So here this length is 147.974. So that is the length of my path. So if I take that number, let's see if I can remember it here, and I create 174.974. Did I get that right? Oh, 147. If we make the dash that long, but then also make our gap the same length, if we come into our code here, we'll see that we have this long gap here. And then if we play around with our dash offset, we can essentially take it right out so that there's no stroke. And then we can use that to draw it on, and we can use the animation to draw it on. My thing seems to be 974. Oh, 47. That's why it's a little bit off. And so with this set up here, we're actually going to then copy this also down into here. So that will make sure it's offset so that it's hidden by default. And so now we can essentially take this number down all the way to 0, and that will draw on our shape. So now we just need to create an animation that will do that for us. So if we come here and we create an animation, so I'm going to do a at keyframes. I'm going to call this crown base. And then I'm going to do a start. So at the start, I want, so at 0%, I want my stroke dash offset to be exactly where I started. So at this 147970 number. And then at the end, I want it to come down to 0. So I've made that animation, and now I'm going to apply that animation here. So I'm going to put it in animation, call it in as crown base. I'm going to make it, let's try 2 seconds. And then I want it to first draw on and then draw off afterwards. So I'm going to put it as alternate. And then I want it to repeat infinitely, so I'm going to add this infinite here. So that will call in this animation, 2 seconds long, alternate it infinitely. So if we come take a look at that, so we see it gets drawn on, and then it draws back off. So that does the idea of what I want to do, but then is a little bit different from here. We see the speed's a bit different, and then we're going to need to deal with some timing with the rest of our strokes. So how I decided to set this up is that I created a bunch of keyframes and timestamps that all of them will kind of slowly build on as I go. So I'm actually going to have this, all of my animations come in at 2 seconds, but I'm going to have, within my keyframes, have things finish a little bit quicker and earlier so that everything's working well. So I'm going to first put a bit of a delay. So I'm actually going to keep this first keyframe in until about 10% of the way through. And then I want it to be completed by about 40% of the way through. So that way, the kind of last 60% of my animation, that will time nicely so that the rest of it is working during that time. So I come and I save that and I refresh. Now it draws on quickly and then it just stays on nicely for a bit and then it goes away. So what that's doing is essentially it's completing and then giving time for the rest of it to complete around it. So now let's take a look at the next one here. So I'm going to have this inside left one draw in next. So I'm going to grab my label thing nicely, so that should be line left center. So then now here I'm essentially going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to discover how long it is. I'm going to create this stroke dash array, the stroke dash offset, and then I'm going to create an animation that will essentially accomplish the same thing. So I'm going to come back to Illustrator. I'm going to grab the one I need here. I'm going to look at the length. So this one is 58.799. So just to make my life easier, I'm going to copy here because there's all the attributes I need. I'm going to name this line left center. And then I'm going to drop in this length, which is 58,799. I'm going to drop that in each of these spots. So I want to make sure the dash length is the exact length I need. So is the gap. And then I want to offset it by the amount it is so that it's off screen. And now I need to create a new animation for this one. So I'm going to call it crown left center. I'm trying to be as consistent as possible with how I name things so I know which one's which. I'm going to do a keyframes here, call it crown left center. And then similarly, I want to time things. So I want it to start a bit after the creation of my base. So at 0% here, I'm going to have my stroke dash offset where I want it to start. And then we'll go a little bit later. We'll go at about 20% to start it. So there's a bit of delay from when the base starts. I'm going to repeat that same number so that we stay at this number until that point. And then I want it to complete at, we'll say, around 65%. Again, we're trying to delay it a bit off the completion of the base so that there's kind of a cascading effect. And this stroke dash offset, we're going to put now to 0. And then, again, we'll repeat that at 100%. So now we save that, and we come in and we refresh here. We'll see that the first one draws in, and then the second line comes in after it, and it kind of has this nice staggered draw-in effect. So what I'm essentially going to do now is just repeat those exact same steps for the other lines here.